Hey guys, welcome back to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great weekend so far. I'm joined once again by Clutch Points beat reporter Eric Vincent. Eric, welcome back to the show, man. How you doing?
Feeling good, man. Excited to be here. We got a lot to get into. Got off a very, very exciting series we're going to talk about. It's a lot of good stuff here on Play, man. I'm happy to be here. Appreciate the time.
As always, man. I saw you and a lot of other Pistons fans kind of have some friendly. We'll call it friendly Twitter beef with Knicks fans. So got to talk about that of like just kind of going back and forth with Nick fans and like you being able to cover your first playoff series as a reporter covering the Pistons.
Yeah, that was my first full season. I got to get to the postseason action, which made it that much sweeter, especially against a team like the Knicks. They're starting for a championship, haven't had one in a while, and they were very braggadocious early. They're talking pretty reckless. And I'm a beat reporter. I'm supposed to be professional and stand on one side. But I see the landscape of other media members, and they're allowed to be fans. Like Stephen A. can be a fan on ESPN. Other people can be a fan of their team, even though they spot. So I found my way to balance both. And, I found my way to be a fan and be a media member, as long as I wasn't being biased, which, I don't have a reason to be. They were they just made so many arguments that made me so mad. The Jalen Brunson can be leading the league in fouls drawn, and they still complain about the number of free throws he takes. Like it's just out, it's kind of ridiculous. So somebody had to step in and kind of be the enforcer there. It got ugly. They got in my comments a lot, but it's okay. I got Ben Stiller co-side of me. I was able to interview Walt Frazier in the process too. So all the trolling in those comments won't hurt me, and so it was a pretty good outcome. I was happy with what happened.
Yeah, so I saw you going at it, and I saw a lot of mutuals that we both follow, kind of just like going back and forth with one Nick account in particular, Nick Spews, who at the end of the day, I probably would have done the same thing because I'm a Piston fan. Like I'm going to support the team that I'm invested in, so I can't really be mad at him for that. But honestly, I thought it was good fun. There was a lot of entertainment on the timeline. Like FanDuel run it back. Like he DM'd me, and I don't know who their social manager is, but he's like, look, I made up a stat, and like Nick fans fell for it, and I was just like, bro, like that's hilarious. By the way, like he's like making up stats, and he was like, Nick's for clicks. Works every time. I was just like, man, that's hilarious. But obviously, like your first playoff series, like is there like one key moment that you're taking away, or was it just kind of like pinch myself? I'm covering a playoff series with the Pistons right now.
Man, yeah, I think it would have to be. It was a couple moments actually. Again, the atmosphere was amazing. Anybody who's in the comments that was at LCA showing out, going crazy, kudos to you, man. The energy there was absolutely phenomenal. And for the playoffs, it's regular for media members to get a little bit more dressed up. So I put a suit on, I put a jacket on. I tried to get a little bit more stylish with it. So in the process of that, in the media room where there's food and the buffet, I got to meet Worldwide Wes, who's a senior advisor for the Knicks. We were having a little bit of banter about the 04 Pistons. I told him that Chauncey's one of my favorite players. Sheed's one of my favorite players. He was mad I didn't mention Rip, so we had a little bit of a back and forth with that. Also challenging to play one-on-one, so that was fun. But that, kind of equated to game 6 when I saw him again, where he put me in the same table to meet and interview and talk to Walt Frazier about his view. He does the color commentary for the Knicks on their side. He said, yeah, man, you able to hold on with me, so why don't you go ahead and talk to him? He said, if you got any ounce of brains in you, you'll go interview him right now. I'm like, okay, all right, cool, let's do it. So, just being able to freestyle off of that, talking to the fans in the building, talking to a lot of the, the big wigs and some legendary players, from both sides of both teams. It was so much to take in, man. It's one of those moments I'll never forget. I'm 34 years old. I was there for the 04 run. I was in the arena when they played the Bucks in the first round and it was lights out over there. This felt a little more crazy than that. I feel like the FU Brunson chants, a lot of the toxic energy, but it was all for good reason. So it was so many fun takeaways, and I'll definitely cherish that for the rest of my life.
I'll just say, like, watching from home, I've never heard Little Caesars Arena that loud. Now, mind you, like, I've gone to Pistons games this season. I've gone to Red Wings games this season. Like, the atmosphere, like, at home felt electric. So I can't even imagine what it was like down there. I know a friend of ours, Sean Murphy, he was telling me, like, on his iPhone watch that it hit like 140 decibels. Like, it was just so damn loud. He's like, yeah, I couldn't hear shit, dude. Like, at all. So I mean, you never, like, it was just cool to see everyone, like, go out, show out. Some people didn't wear the t-shirts. I guess it is what it is at this point. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, it was really cool to see the Pistons not only, like, host not one, not two, but 3 playoff games, because they forced a game 6. But just as a fan and someone that has been doing, like, weekly podcasts for, like, the past, like, 4 or 5 years, man, like, got a taste of the playoffs. I want to go back next season. I don't know about you.
Yeah, you can't help but be hungry for a little bit more. And then I saw a follow-up podcast with, I think, Brunson, where he even talked about how energetic and how crazy that fan base was. He said, the FU Brunson chance aside, when they called him a flopper, which was super loud, booing him every time he touched the ball, going at Cat every time he touched the ball. And then they were chirping too. Like, they were going, back and forth with the fans in the front row. You could just tell that everybody was, on pins and needles the whole game. I'm so happy that each game was actually competitive. It wasn't a blowout in any of the 6 games. So, that showed that the Pistons truly belong. And the fans carried their weight, even, like you said, even though they didn't wear the t-shirts. They did a good job of representing, and it carried an unbelievable atmosphere inside of LCA.
It really was. Like, I'm working on a project video right now of, like, how this team is so much different from the 2015-16 and the 2018-19 team.
Oh yeah.
And, like, why I think, like, this team isn't scratching the surface right now, because they're incredibly young. Mm-hmm. And they'll probably be back as a top 6, maybe top 5 seed, depending on, like, what really happens this off season. But, like, I'm glad they got the monkey off their back too. Like, not winning a playoff game for 17 straight years. Cool. They have to wait until next year to win a home playoff game. I really thought they were going to win one in game 4. Like, the last minute foul was just crazy. There's so many things in these playoffs that were just, like, you have to rewind and just rewatch it and relive it, because, like, there were so many things that I missed. Like, I watched back games 3 and 4, and I'm like, man, like, absolutely crazy between the crowds, the FU Brunson, the flopper stuff. Like, it was so memorable. And even though we didn't win a first round playoff series, it was still, like, really enjoyable to watch this as a fan at the end of the day.
Yeah, they did what they needed to do. Like, that was one of my goals. Even I thought that they had a chance to win, which obviously they showed that they did. I picked them to win in 6. But at the very least, I wanted them to, at the very least, show that they belong. Winning 2 games on their home court 100% matters. Being able to answer the runs that the Knicks win on, like Brunson getting hot, Mikal Bridges hitting tough shot after tough shot, Cat playing, like he was hearing a lot of the chatter around his name and then responding to it. The Pistons did a really good job of bouncing back from double-digit deficits repeatedly to get in position to win, towards the fourth quarter. So if the inexperience would have been a matter of them just getting blown out, that would have been a completely different conversation. And I think our energy right now would be totally different. The fact that they were able to withstand and kind of answer blow for blow, throughout injuries, not having Ivey, not having Stu, not sure when he was going to come back, and, still just being able to answer the call with who they had. I like you said, it showed that they truly belong, and it should be, I won't say guaranteed, but they shows that they belong and should have that desire to get back as soon as next season, because they're in perfect position to repeat what they did.
I mean, given, like, where New York's at, like, that's a team that I think you talk to a Knicks fan, like, they're matched up to go against the Boston Celtics, who were, a favorite to make it out of the East, injuries included.
Right.
The fact that the Pistons tested them, and, like, realistically, like, they could be playing in a game 7, depending on, like, how, whistles go. But, like,
right.
It was a competitive 6-game series. And obviously, I'm pretty positive about it. And you're right. Like if they didn't win a game, they got blown out. They got swept like they did in the previous two playoffs, and 2015 and 2018. Absolutely, we'd probably be having different narratives,
For sure.
in conversations. We do have. Shout out to my guy Tom, number one Pistons Korea fan, saying Eric Vincent, the man followed by Ben Stiller. Shout out.
Unfortunately, I didn't get the follow, Tom. I hit him up. I got the tweet. He followed Sean Murphy, and I thought I was coming next because, he tweeted my video. I didn't get the follow after, man. I'm a little hurt by that. So, Ben, if you watch it, you owe me a follow. Sean Murphy, I'm very, very envious of you right now, my brother. But yeah, it was still a cool moment. I can't be mad at it. It is what it is.
So Sean saw your tweet and saw an opportunity to get a follow. So that's what you're saying.
He tweeted him and said, "Oh my God, Ben tweeting Eric Vincent." Da, da, da. And then he follows him after. I'm like, "Oh snap, my turn next." Nope, not gonna happen. I got snubbed.
Man, shout out to Sean. I hope Ben Stiller does follow you. Even though he's a Knicks fan, he's still one of my favorite actors. Like he's just
big legend.
He's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I did kind of want to get into a little bit of NBA draft. We're not talking about prospects. I know some people. I got a DM. This guy like listed like 15 players that he wants me to watch for the second round pick, and I was like, that's how locked in he is already, and I absolutely love it on Instagram. So if you are watching, you know who you are, because I completely forgot his first name. I apologize, but this is more of like a question with where they're at. Like, could you see them trading up in the draft as maybe they fall in love with the prospect?
I wouldn't put really anything against their, I wouldn't say anything is impossible. What could be on the table? I think Trajan understands that the idea of like just running it back with what they had is probably not going to cut it. Guys are going to get older. Things need to change. Other teams are going to change and kind of prepare for another opportunity to get back to the postseason. So I can see it possibly happening. I think it may be a little rare, just unless they fall in love and head over heels with somebody. I think they don't have their first round pick. I think it's the 37th overall, in their second round. So, it's going to be a big climb, but I can see him try to get active. Trajan's not a GM that likes to just sit on his heels. Like he's very active. He was when he was with New Orleans. He was when he was helping with the Clippers, I want to say, or under David Griffin. Oh no, that was with excuse me. But yeah, I can see him still getting active and trying to, find something that works if they fall in love with somebody, because again, that's just been their nature, and they're trying to do whatever they can to solidify that future. And it wouldn't shock me at all if they did that.
I think one thing that maybe goes unnoticed this offseason is, one, the Pistons won 44 games. Like, shout out to them for that. But their first round pick was locked up for so damn long because of that Isaiah Stewart trade. It's going to the Timberwolves this year, which, Timberwolves, they're balling right now in the playoffs, which they're one of my favorite teams to watch if I'm just being objective as like a basketball fan. But now they can trade future first. Like, that's huge. And I don't think a lot of Pistons fans are talking about that right now. Like, you don't have any protections. The protections are completely lifted. You can trade future first. You got a second round pick. Trajan's first move, actually. Traded for Tim Hardaway Jr. He got a second from Dallas that belongs to the Toronto Raptors. It's sitting at 37, and that's the pick that you'll have. So maybe late first round. You never really know. I think, like, if Trajan is in love with someone, he strikes me as the type of general manager to try to get something. I mean, he did it in the second round. That's how we got Wendell Moore and Bobby Klippman out of it. Just kind of traded up. You never know at the end of the day. But I think it's kind of early to talk about draft. I know someone had asked me, could I see him doing it collectively? I just don't know. I think it really depends on like what they're kind of hearing going into free agency, because I'm sure we're going to be getting a bunch of rumors over the next month or so of like what's happening, what do the Pistons want to do, what does the league want to do. There's a lot of superstars that are probably going to be on the block, especially with the draft coming up. Who's going to get the first overall pick? Please don't be New Orleans. But honestly, this sent Cooper Flag to like Utah or something.
That's what I feel like he's bound to be. I think it's either there or maybe Brooklyn. But, I think Trajan has emphasized a lot that while they do want to win now, they understand that the future is important as well. They don't want to just be one and done and then, be in purgatory like, the Suns or, what the Lakers were after they won. Like, they don't want to be in a situation like that. They want to have, invested pieces for the future, which is why they're able to take a pick like Ron Holland when they did, because his development is important, but it's not an immediate need at this moment right now. So I think he still want to, have that in the the tenfold of what he wants to do. But, fortunately for them, considering the wins that they put together, knowing that the foundation is slowly coming together with the players, the coaching staff, and their front office, they're able to take their time with maybe some of those future moves. So, it may not have to be a rush, but like you said, if it's a player that they fall in love with, I wouldn't rule it out at all.
Yeah, me either. You never really know, because players slip every draft. Like, we always think that when we do these mock drafts, that's where the players are going to end up. And like, the NBA draft humbles you very quick. Your boards go out the window very quickly. Like, there could be a guy right now that I think is, a late second rounder, and some team drafts him in the lottery. It happens every year.
Absolutely.
Like, I was just having a conversation with one of my buddies, and we were talking about how Milwaukee drafted Thon Maker. And I was just like, yeah, bro, like, that was such a reach. Like, they were trying to get Giannis in a bottle twice. And it kind of blew up in their face. Like, stuff like that happens. I don't think that there's like an international prospect that's like really intriguing to like a Thon Maker, because the hype with him was like insane. Like, people are calling him like the next Kevin Durant. Like, it was insane. Like, some of the conversations that I remember having.
I definitely remember them conversations, them, similar to the Bowls, like those long, rangy international players that could be as high as, KD or whatever. I mean, we even saw that with Bobby Clinton's trainer when we had him on. Had a similar projection, but, things work out a little bit different. That's the league for you.
Hey, man, shout out to Bobby and shout out to Jeremy. Jeremy, man, I swear, I definitely have to give him back on the podcast, because like he's just a funny dude. I have a comment from a Mathis, who's actually a big Brazilian Piston fan. I feel like Pistons have like a really big international fan base. Like, got guys in Australia that are coming out here, flying out here. You have Tom in Korea. Like, dude, Tom is funny, bro. Like, he's literally playing like GMAT Cash like in the car. Like, they're like, what are we listening to?
Tom was a great follow. I love Tom. That was awesome. I got to meet Piston Jack too this season, which was an absolute highlight. Yeah, it was cool to see the kind of reach that this team has, especially knowing the perception around Detroit is nobody cares about Piston basketball. And I think the franchise did a really good job of highlighting, that international reach and, showing them a good time when they were, in the arena at LCA. So shout out to y'all, man. Fan from Brazil. That's fantastic. I see someone from London as well. Like, it's a lot of good support around the world.
Yeah, Dre was from London, England. He flew out to games 3 and 4. So shout out to Dre watching on Twitter right now. Like, I always say, like, maybe I'm biased, but I feel like our international fans are like some of the best fans. Like, I know this isn't like Pistons related, but there's a guy that I follow on Twitter that's a big Tigers fan that's from London as well. And like, he's coming to like 3 or 4 Tigers games. It just kind of shows you like Detroit is such a great sports city. And I feel like we have some of the best fans in the world, but maybe it's me. I'm a little biased on here.
I mean, I think the facts are out there now, which makes it even crazier for people like Shaq to say the stuff that they say. Like, the proof is there. We're packing out arenas. There was no sell the team chance. Like, even last year when they were struggling, the fans were still showing up and, giving some energy during those games. So, yeah, that passion, that love is there, man. Shout out to the fans in the arena. Shout out to the fans here watching. Y'all went crazy this year, man. You should take your hat off and be proud of yourselves.
Yeah. Honestly, man, it's so cool to see. So I think we've been having a lot of conversations. I know I've had you on here multiple times. I feel like I have you on here once a month, and I absolutely love it. And I know we've talked about, like, should the Pistons, re-sign certain players. Now, this is a compiled list of the Detroit Pistons free agents, minus Donis Jenkins, because I don't really know what the Pistons two ways are going to be. on their outlook with that, because two ways change every year.
Right.
But these are all 5 of the Detroit Pistons free agents. So we have Tim Hardaway Jr., Dennis Schroeder, Malik Beasley, Lindy Waters, Paul Reed. Do you want to kind of maybe just go down each individual one and kind of give your perspective on each player?
Yeah. I think these are all very interesting names. They all made a very intriguing impact in some way, shape, or form for this team. I mean, even Lindy Waters hitting that, last second shot to go to overtime against the Bucks before the regular season was over was pretty cool. But yeah, looking at these names, they're gonna have to make some tough decisions regarding these 5 names. If I could just, and these are all guesses, I'm not reporting anything. This is just, what I think can shake up and happen. I think it may be a little too repetitive to bring back Tim Hardaway and Malik Beasley. I think Beasley, even though his postseason ended in kind of unfortunate fashion, I think he's done enough to kind of show how important he is to this rotation. He's shown that he can play off the bench, in the starting lineup, and be that reliable shooting source that Cade and this team is needed in terms of spacing and shot creation for such a long time. I've loved what I saw from Beasley this season. I think he's their top priority, and I do have a feeling that he comes back. I have a feeling that maybe Schroeder comes back as well, because I just don't know how ready Mark, that's name slipped me for a second. Marcus Sasser. I don't know how ready he is to, step in and be that next guy as their backup point, because he showed that his value is being a scorer, not necessarily the guy that sets up others. And Schroeder has at least been able to do that. I'm not sure where Tim Hardaway goes at this point. He's a little older in his career. He did a lot for the team. He was definitely a great locker room plug, did a lot of great things for this team in terms of their preparation for the postseason. But his streakiness is a little too noted for me. And I think that may be the reason that he might be the odd man out, or one of the odd men out. Lindy, I think probably we've seen the end of him in Detroit. Paul Reed, I think, is interesting. I think he's another one of those great, locker room, players that they have that has brought a lot of great energy and showed a lot of guys like Beef Stew and Duran, how to scrap for, extra possessions and how to fight and, be that, energy glue guy. Like, they have the dog pound. I don't think they ever really initiated him, but I think Paul Reed was kind of like a dog pound player for how they play. He was really good in the postseason when they needed him in short spots, regular season as well. I wouldn't be surprised they find a way to bring him back on a vet minimum. But yeah, I think I would say, to me, if I were to take a guess, I think those would be the 3 that they bring back. What the numbers and figures would be, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's going to be a tough conversation and, decision for a Trajan to make this offseason.
Yeah, when I was looking at like who our free agents were, because obviously off the top of my head, sometimes I forget about Lindy and I forget about Paul Reed and even Dennis Schroeder to an extent. But I think you're right though with Tim Hardaway Jr. I mean, if you look at the cap hit that he has, a cap hold, it's $24 million. So the Pistons, I think in free agency, but they probably have a good indication of what the ballpark figure that they would want to bring back a Tim Hardaway Jr. if they did want to kind of run it back that way with him. But I think at the end of the day, Jaden Ivey only played 30 games, and I'm one to think that once Asar came back, maybe Tim would have kind of gotten out of the rotation a little bit, because I just saw a tweet the other day from Kuka Hill that Jaden Ivey only played 2 minutes with the Sar, Cade, Jalen Duren, and Tobias.
Insane.
It kind of shows you, like, we were kind of robbed though, like, because Ivey was playing some of the best ball of his career under JB in his first year. But I do agree with you. I think it's kind of redundant because you are getting Jaden Ivey back. He should be 100% healthy by training camp, and saw him wear a practice jersey. First time I've seen him wear a practice jersey, last week. So obviously the rehab is going well. But if I'm being honest, I would be okay with letting Tim just kind of explore free agency. And if there's not a market for him, if you can get him on a friendly deal, I guess kind of do it that way. Malik, I'm with you, and I think Malik is priority number one for not only Pistons fans, but I feel like this front office.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where this front office can kind of do like, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of gymnastics in a sense, where I would give Malik a mid-level exception. I would give him the 3-year mid-level. That way you don't have to use your cap space. And I think it's enough for him to be happy with, because if you kind of look at the biggest contracts he's ever had, it was Minnesota. Like that was the biggest contract he ever had. And I think a mid-level is a little bit lower than what he was in Minnesota, but at the end of the day, I feel like he likes it here. He likes playing with Cade. He likes being home. And I think that matters. And he was just such a positive voice in the locker room. And I know he gave a lot of reporters the time that you guys asked for him. And like, obviously the 3-point shooting, I think, is just so appealing to keep him on this roster. And he's not even 30 yet, by the way. So if you give him a 3-year deal, like he'll still be like what, 31, 32 by the time the contract's over. Maybe you give him another 3-year deal when you have a little bit more cap space to spend. So Malik would be, for me, number one. Dennis Schroeder, I want to bring him back. I really do. I think where the Pistons have a leg up is they have his early bird rights, which I think will help with negotiations. And it makes me wonder, I know I touched on Ivey, like Dennis Schroeder wouldn't really have to play, 30, 35 minutes a game because you have a health of Jaden Ivey, and you can kind of let Dennis Schroeder just run the second unit with Malik, with Stu, with Bobby Klitman, kind of putting it out there. Love you, Tech, but man, season was rough. Hope you're doing well. But I would love to bring back a Dennis Schroeder. Lindy, I just didn't see enough. Even though that Bucks game, that was a crazy game, by the way. Pat Connaughton legacy game. Good Lord.
Kyle Kuzma 40 or whatever, but he got out the
yeah, he scored 40, then he forgot how to play basketball in the playoffs. Like I don't even know what happened there, man. It was wild. Lindy, I think if you just want like a cheap option because he's a small forward, maybe if you're just trying to fill out the roster, maybe, but I think we could probably both agree most likely he's not going to be on this roster. I think he was just kind of a throw-in piece for Dennis Schroeder at the deadline. And then Paul Reed, I think what he did, I think some people kind of undersell, not being only like not playing each and every game, but he was positive. He was a third string center. Like in the playoffs, I thought he did a good job as he could have, trying to go up against Mitchell Robinson, who's 7 feet, and Paul Reed is like 6'8". So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you try to look to upgrade that third string center. Maybe you try to get, I don't know, an Andre Drummond, get a little bit more size there as a third string center on a vet's minimum. I don't know. But if I had to just pick two guys out of this list, it's probably Malik and Schroeder.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at this point. Schroeder did a really good job. Like you can maybe make the argument that he was in stretches their second best player based on how he was playing on both sides of the ball. Did a really good job of defending, Brunson, and was really helpful as their secondary ball handler and primary in certain instances. But that's, kind of what we talk about with Cade as well. You need, there's a world where you can see them both, have Schroeder on the floor and then having Ivey next to him as well. And that kind of dynamic gets a little bit easier for the two of them because there were a lot of stretches where Schroeder had to just create everything. And that's not really what you want your backup guard to be. You want to be able to have, I think you need to have two creators on the floor at all times. And it seemed like the Pistons were kind of shrunk down to having one. Tobias, I thought, had a pretty good series, but a lot of it was created off of his catch and shoot opportunities or maybe just posting up on the block against smaller, matchups. And I think you need just maybe one more guy to kind of go along with that dynamic. And I think having a Cade, a healthy Ivey, Schroeder off the floor or off the bench, and then maybe one more guy to kind of, bring a little bit of a more scary dynamic offensively, I think puts them in a different kind of tier. And, it doesn't have to be so much where they're leaning on just one person to create for 4 other guys, because that can get sloppy, especially when you're playing against a team like the Knicks, who had creators and guys who were just making miracle shot after miracle shot. Like, how many OG Anunoby shots where he's off balance with a guy in his face, he knocks it down. Mikal Bridges, same thing. Cat, 3, 4, 5 steps behind the 3-point line, sinks it with ease. Like, they were just hitting some unbelievable shots, and the Pistons need a little bit more firepower to be able to match with teams like that, especially heading into the postseason.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. I think free agency is definitely going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of tell though, like going into like last summer, the Pistons were shocked that they got Malik Beasley for what they got him at, and
For
like
sure.
Malik saying like, "Don't trade me, I want to be here." I think it just kind of speaks volume of like his character and like what he wants to do in Detroit. I mean, he said he wanted to bring the playoffs back. He did that. I know on that stream earlier this year, said he wanted to bring a Larry O'Brien back to Detroit, and like obviously he kind of struggled in the playoffs, but at the end of the day, I think going from 14 to 44 is crazy, and I think a lot of these vets are a big reason why they were able to be a playoff team. Obviously, Cade took that huge step, but like I don't think they get to where they're at without a lot of these veterans on this list.
100%. And to even get as far as they did is a complete shock. I mean, these guys, like you said, even the impact of a guy like Paul Reed, who, again, may not be remembered by a lot of the outside noise, but I think like the Pistons fan base, there's always those like, role players that are just remembered forever, like the Job Berries, the Ish Smiths. I think Paul Reed has done enough to kind of, cement himself, even going back to the Utah game where he scores and he's shoving, what's his name? The 6 man, I forgot his name off their bench. He just played with a different kind of fight for this team and showed them basically what it means to be, like kind of embody that Detroit Pistons basketball in the front court, and kind of giving that extra effort. It's not just all about scoring, because Paul was good at scoring, but he was able to pull down rebounds, switch around defensively, fight for loose balls. He did a lot of great things for this team, and I think based on what they need at this point, I actually love the Andre Drummond name. That's actually a really good idea. Needing that size, knowing that he's interested in finishing his career in Detroit, as he said before, I think it just kind of makes, all the sense in the world. It'll hopefully get y'all to stop booing him when he shows up to LCA. It makes a lot of sense based on what they need. If that's the upgrade over Paul, then I think it makes all the sense in the world, especially off the glass too, where they needed a lot of assistance, fighting on, against the offensive opportunities from the Knicks or whoever else. So yeah, they have a lot of opportunity to shaping up that bench, and I think there's some good names to fill in to do it.
Yeah, there definitely is. We're going to kind of get into some names that I've seen some Pistons fans talk about. But before we do that, my guy Johnny, man, shout out to Johnny. This guy just dropped $100 super chat, bro. Like, shout out to Johnny, man. Like, no, thank you, Johnny. Thank you for being a day one subscriber. I'm telling you, each post game podcast, Johnny was consistent. He was in all 82 post game podcasts, even the playoff post game shows. I seen him in there. So shout out to Johnny for the super chat, man. You didn't have to do that. I do appreciate it though.
Hey, Johnny, I need some gas money, bro. If you want to spread it around, hey, you see prices and everything is rough out here. So Johnny, what's happening, bro? Hit up my line.
Yeah, bro. It's a recession out here. I feel it, bro. Honestly, I mean, it's bad when Five Guys is making freaking combo meals.
Oh my god, I saw that. That made me laugh so hard.
It's all those things in a Five Guy combo meal are like $15 each. If we're being serious. Oh man,
times out here, man.
So, with this playoffs and this season, I kind of wanted to ask you, like, what position do you think the Pistons need to address the most?
I think they really need a stretch 4 upgrade for sure. I think Tobias did a really good job this season. I think he did a really good job of changing the perception around his name. People were talking about how he was going to come up short in the postseason. He did a really good job in the postseason. I think on both sides of the ball in terms of scoring, defending Cat, like getting in his head, being physical, like even the shots that Cat was making, Tobias made him earn every single one. It's not like Cat was just overpowering him every single time and they were just hunting him out where the Pistons needed to double team him constantly. Like Tobias did a really good job. However, I think he could be a little bit more beneficial maybe coming off the bench next season. I just think based on what they need, again, what they need maybe just one more creator that can just give you a different kind of dynamic on offense. I think you need someone that maybe a little more younger and has a bit of a better handle as well. Something that always bothered me this season with him is his handle wasn't strong. He really struggled like finishing at the rim at times as well. And I just think they can find an upgrade with that. There could be some teams that are willing to sell. I think there's a lot of teams that could be interested, that have some names that I'm interested in to have in the back of my mind. And, I think Trajan is going to be busy, reaching out to those kind of teams, like maybe teams like the Nets, teams like maybe the Hawks, teams like maybe the Kings. Like, I just feel like these are the teams that could be interested in making some big changes. We talked about New Orleans. There's a lot of rumors already flying about Zion and his availability. And, knowing that Trajan's ties come from New Orleans, that's going to be a big connection all off season. So they got a lot of options that they can reach into. And I think the stretch four will be the biggest opportunity. Like, I don't think they need to get another guard. Sorry, Devin Booker, fans. I just don't think they need to do that. And I think Asar is the great. I think he needs to make a lot of upgrades in his game, but I still think they look at him as their three of the future based on how he played this season. So I think stretch four is the biggest area where they could really make a difference in an upgrade.
Yeah, I agree with you. Before we got a backup point guard, before we got Dennis, I was like all on the backup guard train. But I'm gonna put a graphic on the screen that are people that are watching live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube right now. So these are the most 5 names that have come across my timeline. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think, is a very sneaky free agent that they could target. He's a UFA, which I don't know if the Timberwolves can retain him. Might be a sneaky THJ replacement, if we're being honest. Like, he's a good defender. Really, I've liked him for a long time. I remember when he first came out of the draft, people are like, he's not good, but I mean, he's developed so much, especially in Minnesota. Bobby Portis, who I've been on the Bobby Portis train for a long time. He doesn't have a player option, so I don't know what's going to happen with the Milwaukee Bucks, especially the way they went out, and then Damian Lillard, going through blood clots, and then just having a really gruesome injury in that playoff series. I think it's a team to keep an eye on, especially with Brook Lopez. He's also going to be a free agent. Don't really know what he wants to do and how much longer he wants to play. So Bobby Portis could definitely be a player you keep an eye on. Naz Reid, I think we've talked about him before. Again, another guy on a player option. See a lot of Pistons fans talk about him in terms of, possibly upgrading the front court. I think the only thing with him is him and Ron are going to have to kiss and make up if that ever did happen. Or I don't know, maybe just getting a boxing.
Much needed therapy between them two.
Yeah. One name that I've seen a little bit is Steven Adams, which, man, the playoffs that he's had with the Houston Rockets, I saw a stat. He's like a plus 53 in net rating. I've always been a Steven Adams fan. I don't really know how much longer he wants to play in the NBA. He might want to go back to Houston depending on what happens in Game 7 with the Warriors. But I've always low key been a Steven Adams fan. Maybe he's a guy that the Pistons look to get. I mean, you do need more size in the front court, and yeah, he's a guy that's really good at grabbing rebounds, setting screens. Good, underrated passer, by the way, too. And the final guy, I know, when we did those huge live streams with Brandon and Sean, I had mentioned Miles Turner. Obviously, again, the same situation with Nas. I think maybe him and Stu can play with some Legos. I don't know, but stretch 5, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent as well. But I mean, these are just some of the names that I've seen Pistons fans just kind of comment on social media. But what do you kind of make of this list? And is there a player that really is piquing your interest right now?
Bobby Portis, I like a lot. I think he's super underrated. He's a guy that's always given the Pistons problems whenever they play. Very active on the glass, has stretched his game out to be a jump shooter, even a 3-point shooter at times when they need it. And he's even crafty enough to create his own shot. I like Bobby Portis' game a lot. I think it would really fit next to Duren. I think he fits that dog pound mentality perfectly, and he doesn't need any therapy like maybe Miles Turner and Nas Reed would need with his team. Yeah, Alexander Walker I think would be very interesting too. A good two-way player, does a good job of spacing the floor out, plays in transition well. I think he would really give a good lift based on what they need, in terms of their guard depth. They need another creator. I just don't think it needs to be another guard, and I think a guy like him would be very sufficient. Especially, Tim Hardaway, I like a lot. He kind of got a little bit of hero ball in him sometimes, which is a little frustrating to watch. So I think they're looking for somebody that can kind of rein that in a little bit better. And I think Walker would be a very good add. Nas Reed was the perfect name on this list until that fight happened. Like, that was just hilarious to watch because everybody on Pistons Twitter was saying the same thing. Like, all right, well, there goes Nas Reed in our free agency hopes. That's not going to happen anymore. So, I mean, he would still be a great fit. I love the way he plays. But I also think he would maybe be interested in what they're seeing in Minnesota's trajectory right now. To take down the Lakers and be one of those sneaky young teams that are really shocking a lot of people in the West with one of the brighter superstars in the NBA and Anthony Edwards. They got a lot of decisions to make, but I would definitely love Nas Reed in the Pistons. Steven Adams, I feel like he could be very sufficient. I feel like he would be one of those backup fives that would be a great replacement for a Paul Reed. One of the solid, most strong, players in the NBA. One of those gritty, dirty work guys that I think would embody Detroit basketball very well. I wouldn't mind that at all. And I really like Miles Turner's game. I just don't think he's going to want to come to a team like Detroit to be a backup. And I don't think the team is willing or ready to give up on Jalen Duren either. He's taken a lot of steps and strides, especially in the second half of the regular season. Had some pretty good breakout moments in the playoffs as well, even though it was a little up and down at times. I think he showed that, he can be that piece that the team needs, heading into the future. A great lob threat, a really good underrated passer, and made some good strides on defense as well. Even when he had to guard in space, he got some kind of cheap fouls where a lot of the Knicks were kind of running into him and throwing the ball up, which I just think is kind of a BS call. But, he needs to find a way to kind of, weather those storms and figure it out. And I don't know if having a Miles Turner next to him would really make much sense for either of them. I think Miles Turner is going to get a bag. I just don't see Detroit being the place to make it happen. He would be perfect if you didn't have Jalen Duren. If you had for whatever, if Duren or if Andre Drummond was on the team and he had to start, Turner would be the perfect replacement to get him out and then be that stretch five who can also play defense. But I think they want to see what they have in Duren, who's still only 21 years old. That kind of makes the most sense at this point right now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with the Duren assessment. I still think that there's something that the team wants him to work on. I think it's a mid-range. I think if he had a good 12 to 15 foot jump shot, it would open so much with his game. I don't know if it's something that they're working on behind closed doors. I know you've taken videos of him working in the post like each pregame, but we very rarely see him shoot the basketball unless it's like late clock situations. That's something I'm interested in. I know someone had asked, why do I feel that a Steven Adams or an Andre Drummond would want to play a third string center? I can't speak for Steven Adams that he would want to play that. I can't speak for Andre Drummond because he said he does want to come here. And he was kind of playing third string center in Philly. And the reason why he played is because Joel Embiid was basically playing on a torn meniscus.
Right.
And Ubisel, I think I'm saying his last name right. The kid from the FIBA World Cup, like they signed him, and he had his injuries. That's why Andre Drummond is playing third string center. I could see Drummond coming here though, especially because of the ties that he does have with the city of Detroit and the Pistons organization. But I mean, a lot of these guys on this list, ideally, like Nas and Bobby, I think would be like huge gets if you can get them. but I think you would have to make some money work out because a lot of your money is tied up with Cade, Stu, and Tobias. So you have to have conversations. Not saying like it's not possible for the Pistons to get these guys, but you're going to have to make some trades and maybe trade some guys, trade some vets that maybe you guys are cool with, maybe you're not. I think every fan is different. 24 hours after the timeline, like, dude, it was so toxic. Like, they wanted to trade half the core and just go get like a Booker. Like, I was like, bro, you guys got to relax. I get it. I get like the playoffs just ended, but relax for like at least a day.
I heard some wild takes. I heard people call JB a bridge coach. I heard Bird has to go. I heard some wild takes afterwards, man. I'm sure we're gonna get into another one later, but to kind of hone in on what you were talking about, Jalen Duren does work on that 10 to 15 footer a lot. He warms up with Cade during the pre games, and he does take a lot of time where, you know, he's working in screen and rolls where they pop out to him to shoot that 10 to 15 footer. And also not even just shoot, but also, you know, take one or two dribbles to get to the hoop as well. He does work on it a lot. That's definitely something that needs to become, that could, if it did become more consistent, would open up a huge, you know, avenue for this team offensively. But yeah, that's still a big work in progress, unfortunately for him. I feel like he doesn't need, like, you know, we talk a lot about the 3-point shooting and spacing. We don't need to see that from him. He doesn't need to develop it to what, you know, DeMarcus Cousins did in his career, what Brook Lopez did as a 3-point shooter. You know, just that one little 15-foot Jermaine O'Neal shot, I think could open up a lot for him. And it would also, like you said, limit the need to bring in some of these bigger names like a Miles Turner to kind of suffice for that. I think he could unlock that. I think they want to see it from him, and that development is going to be key heading into these next couple of years to see what he does.
Yeah, I mean, even if he kind of takes the Bam Adebayo trajectory, like, I think a lot of Pistons fans would be extremely happy with that.
For sure.
Obviously, Bam protects the rim a little bit more, but I was very impressed with the way Duren not only played high minutes, but his ability to go up against Cat. I think there were a couple situations where he kind of got caught napping a little bit. Like, there's one play in particular that still lives rent free in my head where he's just kind of in the painted area and Cat just shoots an elbow jumper three. He just completely misread the coverage. But I think Duren is still kind of learning how to also protect the paint, but also deal with a center like a Cat. And I think that was kind of like his struggle this season is perimeter fives, but he's only 21. I think there's still a lot there to develop. And I'm sure the coaching staff has a lot for him to work on this summer so he can get it even better. I don't think he's going to be 22 until like almost the end of 2025. So, I mean, like, there's a lot of things to like with Jalen Duren, but I think we're both in agreement. Front court, backup power forward, possibly looking at, you know, maybe more size at the center position. We love Stu. We love Paul Reed, but you need a 7-footer out there to contest and grab rebounds at the end of the day.
Yeah, playing against some of these big front courts, and, you know, they definitely want to get back to that. JB's even talked about that. He said he misses like the dynamic of the big man in the NBA where you can kind of just throw it on the block and, you know, it's not always just running guns, shooting threes. So, you know, I think that's just something that they could unlock. It's definitely something that would help them tremendously. I want to give credit to Stu too, because I've been pretty hard on him a lot about that, about his finishing and, you know, his undersized play. Moving him to center was the best thing that could have happened for him. Like, even when he wasn't like shooting threes, like, he did a really good job of finishing at the rim, you know, with his left hand, right hand, with floaters, and even dunking as well. Like, he did a really good job of improving in that aspect. And, you know, he showed that he is more sufficient and useful as a backup five, more so than a starter in the 4 or the 5 position. I just feel like keeping him there kind of limits the ability for Cade to have a lob threat, Ivey to have a lob threat. You know, you want something to have, you know, go along with their athleticism, especially to play in transition as well to make it a little bit more exciting. So, you know, it was good to see him, you know, step into that role and fit, you know, sufficiently. And it was also cool to see, we're talking about during his upgrades, while they still do have areas of improvement that are needed for all of the young core, it was good to at least see the flashes there. Like, can Ivey be that consistent jump shooter? We saw it. Can Cade be that all-star, you know, top 10 or like elite level player? We saw it. Can Duren take that step? defensively? We saw it. Can Asar be effective offensively? We saw it. Stu off the bench, what are we going to get from Ron? We saw a little bit of a glimpse or a big glimpse from all of the, young foundational players in some way, shape, or form. The next step, make it consistent. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got a lot of questions into the season that we had, and then we got answers.
Yes.
I think a lot of people, preseason, Cade being ranked 67 by ESPN, he's top 10. Like, what are we doing here? Like, he's a top 10 NBA player. And he took a leap, especially after Jaden Ivey got hurt. He went even deeper in his bag to carry the team on his back. Jaden Ivey, being benched last year for Killian Hayes, had his best career shooting not only from three, but field goal percentage as well in 30 games. Obviously, it sucks that we only got to see him for 30 games, but I still feel pretty confident in the backcourt. And I know some people talk about second option, and that's going to be our next topic. So immediately after the Pistons got eliminated, former Detroit Lion, TJ Lang, said that Cade is more of a Robin than he is an actual Batman. So I kind of want to get your take on this. Does Cade need a number 2 option, or do you think that the Pistons have that number 2 option on the roster right
now? TJ, just I don't understand. Before I get to that, TJ, I don't know what you're seeing, man. I think people get really captivated by the late game heroics when they try to make, these kind of analysis of players. Like Jordan and Kobe style of play has just ruined so much of basketball, and it's not their fault, but I think a lot of media members have fallen in love with the Hollywood fourth quarter clutch time that if you don't deliver, all of a sudden you're a Robin. No, you're just wrong. Cade Cunningham has showed that he's a Batman level player, and I do believe they have a Robin on their roster already, and I think it's Jaden Ivey. I think it's a crime that we just haven't been able to see them together for a full stretch of a season, just 60, 65, 70 games together. We just unfortunately haven't seen it yet because of health, bad coaching. Like, it's just unfortunate that we have not seen that dynamic because it clearly works. It clearly works. They're both very selfless players, very good passers. Even like in the 3 years that I've seen them play together, there's never been a time where I've seen Ivey shooting so much where I say, hey, Ivey, can you let Cade get a little bit? Can we spread it out a little bit? Or Cade the same way. Cade, chill in the hero ball. Can you get your other guys involved? You don't really have to worry about that with how they play. Even with the, teammates that they had. Like, again, people were not clamoring or excited, immensely about the idea of, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Tobias being those complementary pieces. They're good players, but they had different perceptions before the season started. And I think their ability to complement that young backcourt the way that they did was fantastic. But I also believe that Ivey has shown that he's suitable enough to be that number 2 guy. Like, there were times where Ivey was the leading scorer of the team, and Cade was kind of, I don't want to say just getting by, but he was doing enough with just maybe like a 19-point, 10 assist kind of night. And that's okay. If Ivey can give you 20, 25 to 30, there's nothing wrong with that, to have that balance. You don't want to always have Cade having to shoot the ball 20, 25 times and carry the water on his own. Like, I don't like seeing that with, when Luka was in Dallas. I didn't like seeing that with, Ant Edwards, in some stretches with Minnesota. It's good to have that balance, and it's good to have, that unpredictability with your team. And I think, again, while I do think they could use maybe one more just offensive, just dynamo in the front court, I think we know for a fact that backcourt works. Ivey perfectly complements his game, and he complements the foundation and the identity that JB wants to play with, which is running out of transition, playing on defense. And that's another upgrade we were talking about in terms of the improvements for Ivey. Can he be an effective defender? Yeah, like that game against the Hawks where Cade got the, game-winning left-handed hook and then he blocked the shot at the end. Ivey was matched up against Trae Young and forced him to get rid of the basketball. So, like, yeah, I think we've seen enough from Ivey to kind of know that he's a building block for the future. And I think he'd be a little bit more dangerous with just one more punch in the front court. But No, to answer the question, Cade is not a Robin type of player, and anybody who thinks that needs to go back and watch the damn film.
I feel like a lot of Pistons fans, maybe they're new Pistons fans, because I don't want to discriminate. I don't like the gatekeep because I think it's really weird to gatekeep because I welcome everyone's opinions at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people that watch the Pistons, maybe, let's just say the month of April,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they look at Cade and they're like, his shots aren't falling. Like the elimination game where he went 0 for 10 from 3. I think if you just watch that, maybe you think that. But if you actually watched every game this season, you would know that Cade Cunningham had games where he was the number one option and his teammates knew it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Cade does play unselfish to a fault sometimes.
True.
Cade will look to get his teammates involved because that's the type of player he is.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that he can't go out and average 35. He could if he wanted to. But the type of basketball player he is, he looks to get everyone involved, and that's what you want your point guard and the floor general to be.
Yep.
For the, he's a Batman. For the Cade needs a Robin, he has a Robin. He only played 30 games this year. He was almost averaging 18 points a game. That's pretty good for a second option, if you ask me. Because Tobias Harris kind of had to slide into that number 2 option.
Yep.
And I don't think a lot of people consider that. Tobias Harris, when Jaden Ivey was healthy and out there, he was like a third option every night. Jaden Ivey is the Robin to Cade's Batman. He's the second option. Shot 40% from 3 on 5 attempts a game. That's not a small sample size. That's a pretty good size. And the one game with Ivey, I think a lot of people will point to the Sacramento game. That's not the game that I want Pistons fans to go back and watch. I want you to go back and watch the game where he came back from injury against Phoenix. That was the most aggressive Jaden Ivey I've ever seen defensively, stripping the ball from Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. He was just a dog defensively. He was hitting 3-point shot after 3-point shot after 3-point shot, getting to the lane, getting to the free throw line, and just affecting the game on both ends of the floor. Like, there were multiple games this year where Ivey had good defensive games, and he was pushing the pace, and it was his turn to take over. Both of these guards, one-game winners, multiple game winners.
Yep.
Ivey in Sacramento. Then he had one against Toronto when Cade was out. Cade had some game winners this year. Like, this backcourt can work. I just think sometimes Pistons fans are a little bit impatient, and I get it. You just went from 14 wins to 44 wins. So you kind of want to just put a little bit of fuel and just light that match and see how far this team could go. Like, realistically, Eric, this team could have won 50 games if the ball bounced their way, if we're being honest. Like, I could go down the schedule. I could go to the Bucks game. I could go to several games where this team could have won 50 games. And that's crazy to think about.
You ain't wrong about anything you just said. Ivey, a healthy Ivey changes a lot. Again, I tweeted it during the series. I said, hey, a healthy Ivey and Stu, this series could look completely different. Nick's Twitter went off, back to the excuses of the media, Detroit. It's not an excuse. It's just a flat-out point that y'all were making when you weren't healthy last postseason. You were saying the exact same thing. The games that stayed out for me with Ivey was the Philadelphia game early in the season and the Laker game at home, where Ivey was showing that when Cade was getting double teamed, he was able to reap the benefits of it. Ivey's a really good off-ball cutter. He draws contact, I think, better than anybody else on the roster. And obviously to complement that with an improved mid-range game and a 3-point shot that was, for a good stretch of the time, more efficient than Malik Beasley. If you looked at the numbers, he was fantastic as a 3-level scorer, especially when there was extra attention, on Cade Cunningham. Not only was he really good at scoring, again, he's a really good passer as well. So when he would make that secondary cut, he can make that second level pass to find Beasley in the corner, to find Tim Hardaway, out on the perimeter, or to throw a simple lob to Duren. Like, that connection was there. That impact was there by Ivey. And I just think people completely forgot about that. I think it makes sense for why when you're watching Jalen Brunson play takeover basketball and then you're waiting for Cade to kind of do the same thing. Yeah, it looks sexy for a while, but you don't always want to rely on that. I think it's easier for Brunson and some of these other guys to play that kind of style when you have to keep somebody on Karl Anthony Towns in the process, where you can't leave Mikal Bridges open in the process. You can't leave OG Anunoby, who played fantastic all series, open in the process. Like, they have to stay locked down on those guys. The Pistons opponents didn't have that same kind of gameplay. They were able to keep all their attention on Cade and dare everybody else to beat them, and they just weren't able to do that. Malik Beasley was a little up and down. Tim Hardaway was a little shaky. Tobias had some inconsistent moments. Like, it happens. So I think having Ivey on the floor, knowing how consistent he was to start the season and how explosive he was to start the season, I just think that was such a huge blow to how they played basketball. Credit to JB Biggerstaff, which is another reason he should have won Coach of the Year, because they were able to change their style completely without their second most important player and still win 44 games and put together an all-NBA campaign for their all-star guard in Cade Cunningham. So, yeah, they missed Ivey so much, and I think he is the clear-cut Robin who can step in and also be a scoring Batman when they need to, depending on the matchup.
Yeah, I think they're so polar opposites in terms of just like when you look at a Cade Cunningham and you look at a Jaden Ivey, they're not kind of the same type of prospect that when you're drafting these players. And I think that's what works. And I see a comment from Mr. Longitude. He's a longtime subscriber. Said, I don't see what others see in Ivey unless he's improving on certain elements of his game. This is what I'll say, because this is a fair question. Jaden Ivey has improved each year. Now it might not be like a drastic improvement, but you can see improvement. I thought in his second season, defensively, there were some improvements in the second half of the season. Yep. I thought this year, he did get caught under ball screens quite a bit, but as the season went on, he got better. He was fighting over the top of screens, and it kind of gave you a little bit of confidence where you're like, okay, he's starting to figure it out. The 3-point shot, he was not known as a 3-point shooter coming out of college. Like, when he was shooting 40% from three, I remember scrolling the timeline like, yo, if Ivey can shoot 40% from three, like, Pistons are going to be the problem come playoff time. Because you have Cade having the ball in his hands, and if Ivey's that open man shooting 40% from three, like, teams are going to have to, respect his jump shot. And I think that's what I see out of Jaden Ivey, Eric. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think, to me, even when you look back at his college stats, like, he was shooting, I think in his like second season, what was it? I feel like he was like around 36%. So it wasn't even so much as the numbers to his jump shot or his 3-point shooting. It was the mechanics that people had such question about. And that is fixed. If you look at his jump shot from his college sophomore season to what it looks like now, it's night and day completely. And I feel like he did a great job in improving in that. I'm not really sure. I don't know if he wants to comment on what the improvements he wants to see from Ivey. I'm all ears to find out. But I was sold on Ivey last season just based on everything he had to go through. Like, again, I've said it before. If Ivey would have crashed out in the media and said, hey, I mean, they just don't believe in me. I don't really know what my role is. I wasn't expecting any of this. Nobody would have been shocked or upset to hear him voice that publicly and like kind of rebel against whatever Monty Williams was coaching in the process. But he was able to just keep his head down, say, hey, whatever they need me to do, I'm gonna still be J.I. was the direct quote he gave before the season started. And when he was put back in the starting lineup or even coming off the bench, the flashes were there. Obviously, when he got more playing time and was consistently next to Cade in the starting lineup, we saw the improvements and we saw more of the flashes. Like, he had a 30-point outbreak against the Pacers one game where he was fantastic. I think Cade was right around the same line statistically. I just feel like if you, like, again, for young players, obviously their game is so predicated in a lot of their development of, okay, can they develop the jumper? Can they develop defensively? To me, I was sold on just the mindset. The fact that he wasn't, putting his head down and sulking. He was there trying to pick his team up, trying to make things work throughout all the adversity they were going through an unbelievably terrible losing streak and everything else that they had to go through. He was still every day trying to show up, pick his team up, trying to improve his game, and he did it in a mature fashion. We didn't see any social media posts of him, like subtweeting or subposting anybody or anything like that.
Yeah.
We didn't see any of that kind of immaturity. We've seen that from other players around the league. He was, mature enough to rise above that, which I mean, I don't want to get too much into it. I saw a video of him reflecting on a lot of things he went through as a child that molded his maturity. If you guys haven't seen it, I really, really advise you go check that out, because I was super impressed and super proud to see what he was able to talk about as a man and what led to things like his religious beliefs and a lot of other stuff. So that adds to me to his mental, toughness as a basketball player. And I don't have any other questions about him. I think Ivey is the guy. He fits next to Cade, and I really hope the Pistons see that through. I really do.
I'll say this, and then we can go on to the next topic. I think in the half court, that's where you miss Jaden Ivey the most.
100%.
The half court offense got exposed.
Yes.
In the playoffs. Like, if Jaden Ivey was out there, I don't think New York doubles as much. I don't think they would have the luxury of doubling as much. If he was healthy in the playoffs, the half court sets, I think, would have been run a little bit more smoothly. And I think that's where you miss him so much.
Yep.
I can understand some fans, maybe they don't get to watch each and every game, and that's understandable. But watching him since he's gotten drafted, I've seen dramatic improvements, especially with the shot. You mentioned it. Like, the mechanics of his shot have improved, and it's not so much the mechanics, it's the release. The release is so much quicker, where he can get that shot off like that. Like, in his rookie year, it was a lot slower and it was very blockable. I think the coaching staff and Fred Vincent have done an incredible job, and also Jaden Ivey as well, because we know just the type of work ethic he has. He spends a lot of time in the gym. Mm-hmm. So if I were to, bet stock on a player developing even more, it's Jaden Ivey, because I know how much work he puts in. I remember Trajan's first week here. He's like, yeah, we have to lock the doors because Jaden Ivey's like staying here like 5-6 hours working on his game. Like the stuff that maybe, everyday fans don't get to see. I hear about Jaden Ivey's work ethic and like what a dog he is, and, what a, good player he is on and off the court. So I'm always going to bet on a guy like that wants to better not only, his playing style, but like the stuff he does in the community as well. So that's why I'm so high on Jaden Ivey, and I'm sure you're the same way.
100%. Yeah, I got to talk to his dad, during the offseason and throughout the season as well. He talked about how him and Cade worked together, to kind of improve on some things. And I loved that quote too, where Trey just said that during media day, where they said they had to lock the gym and get Ivey out of there because he was trying to do too much. But I mean, that just shows, how hungry that this team is. Cade talked about it, where he said basically everybody on this roster has a chip on their shoulder in some way, shape, or form, based on what we went through last season, based on what they went through throughout their careers, the vets as well. Everybody had some kind of chip on their shoulder, and a lot of that hunger was validated based on the steps that we saw them take. And a lot of those steps were taken early as well, even if it didn't come with wins. Losing I think the first 4 or 5 games that they lost until they played the Sixers on the road. They were still trying to fight. They were, keeping their head high. They weren't, trying to get too low. And once the win started clicking, I think everything else kind of made sense from there. So we saw the young foundation of this team not just play well, but play winning Detroit basketball together. And that was the most important thing coming into the season.
Yeah. I mean, I think that maybe goes a little bit unnoticed because he was out for the last 40 or so games, and including the playoffs. But
right.
I did want to stick with Cade Cunningham, and I saw this a couple of weeks ago. I didn't get to talk about it last podcast, but I wanted to talk with you about it. So Carmelo Anthony says he wants to work with Cade, and I want to kind of spin this question. What area do you think Carmelo Anthony could help Cade with the most?
That's a really good question. Because I see a lot of, I don't say a lot of similarities, but in terms of their body type, their ability to operate as a 3-level scorer, I think Melo could unlock a lot. I think what would help the most is his finishing. Cade struggled a lot with his floater, finishing around the rim consistently. And it obviously wasn't still getting enough free throws, as he should have. But I think his finishing, especially late in games, I think is going to be a big difference for him. Melo saw his healthy number of double teams, when he was with the Nuggets, when he was with the Knicks, basically everywhere in his career. And I think Melo will be able to kind of help him with that footwork of being a quick, decisive scorer, where sometimes Cade would dribble a little bit too long, and it would give defenses a little bit more time to collapse on him. I think Melo will do a good job of helping Cade be a better finisher and get a quick release jumper, or at least an attack against his opponent to get them off balance right away instead of waiting. They did a good job at times of getting Cade off ball and letting Asar or Dennis Schroeder bring the ball up and then let Cade play off ball from there. And there were a lot of times where he would post up around, the mid block and, isolated work from there, which was kind of, Melo's bread and butter. So I think that would also be, pretty helpful to see. Like you say, Cade could be a 30, point scorer if he wanted to. He doesn't have to be, because I think passing is the best part of his game. But I do think that scoring, deadliness to be able to, be just a nightmare matchup one-on-one just opens up so much. Now, granted, I think that could still be limited if the amount of help around him isn't there. Like if Ivey's not healthy, or if they don't bring in another, dynamo scorer, we're going to see this extra attention for Cade for a long time. And I really think Trajan Langdon understands that has to be priority number one to make sure that teams can't just overload on Cade and, do whatever they want to do from that regard. So I don't know. I think Melo with Cade in an offseason would be fantastic for him. I just think it would unlock so much of his scoring, his footwork in the post, his ability to get to the free throw line. I just think Melo could teach him a lot. And I really like this side of Carmelo. I've been a big fan of him since he was, a rookie and even back in Syracuse. To see him kind of step up as big brother, even in the Garden where he was beloved. I just think it's really cool to see him embrace this part of his career and his life. And I think Cade will be a huge beneficiary of it.
I know Carmelo on his podcast talked about like Cade just needs that, 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
And when I was listening to him say that, like Cade does have a little bit of post moves, but I think Carmelo could like really redefine and polish that to a point where maybe Cade has 1-2, or maybe even 3 post moves, like go-to moves that he can just score on anybody. And doesn't matter whether it's a big or a point guard. And I think that's where Melo could help Cade with a lot. But Eric, I'm going to be honest with you. The amount of people, when they saw this quote, the negativity with it, I was surprised. Given how this is a completely different topic, given how many Pistons fans wanted Melo over Darko, like, nah, we don't want Cade working with Melo. He's got poor work ethic. We don't want him working with Melo. We don't want him to develop bad habits. He's just trying to get Cade out of Detroit and go to New York. Like some of the like crazy off the wall stuff. I'm sorry. That guy's one of the best scorers in NBA history.
Yes.
Like if Cade wants to work with Carmelo Anthony, let him, because he can teach him a lot of stuff. Especially in the post, one-on-one isolation scoring. I mean, I think some Pistons fans, maybe they didn't get to watch Carmelo that much. Maybe they just watch Pistons games. That's it. Like Carmelo in his prime, man, like good Lord, like that guy could score on anyone. It didn't matter who the hell it was. And I think he can definitely learn that way. Maybe he can learn of, how to kind of like elbow people without the ref seeing it. Because any podcast I was watching the Stanley Johnson podcast the other day saying like Melo was his toughest guard. And like the next day I'm icing up my whole body just because how physical he plays. Like I want Cade to kind of be like that physical, type of prolific scorer that Melo could help him, with develop his game. Because like if Cade is just making the opponent sore after each and every game, like I think that's really crucial come playoff time for him.
And that's what you want to see, especially where a lot of his, I don't want to say a lot of his scoring, but some of his scoring kind of dipped towards the fourth quarter, because you would see him play a little bit tired based on how much extra attention that he was getting. But yeah, if you're able to beat up your, opponent in the post, especially off the tutelage of somebody like Carmelo Anthony, that's going to make him an absolute monster. There's a reason guys like Kobe Bryant called Melo the toughest cover of his entire career. I look at like to me, like I call Melo, like if you had a Mount Rushmore of guys who are just triple threat nightmares, like you give it to him in the post, he's got the ball in the triple threat position. I think Melo's one of the best players ever to be in that triple threat position. Like he was an absolute monster, and it wasn't just his jump shot or a fadeaway. He was getting to the rim too. And again, he was playing small forward. He was 6'9", played about like 240, 250. He was a big boy. And Cade Cunningham is a huge point guard who's in shape, very strong himself, and is going to put on more muscle heading into next season. So if there's, I don't see a better person for him to learn from in terms of retired players. Like I feel like he is a perfect guy to kind of teach and coach, some of that footwork that he could, upgrade and work on. I also think that I wish he was still alive. I think Kobe would have been a really good person for Cade to learn from too, because I feel like he's kind of that same ilk for the way that Kobe used to play in terms of attacking and in terms of his preparation as a basketball player. I think this is a match made in heaven for him. Even I feel like what's his name? Rondo. I think Rondo talked about wanting to work with Cade as well. Those are two of the perfect Rondo too. On cue. I feel like those are two of the most perfect names that could help Cade in terms of finishing as a scorer, working on turnovers as a passer, being a floor general as a point guard. Those are two of the best names that he could work with. And I feel like we'd see an immediate improvement that will put him in those kind of elite level MVP kind of conversations as soon as next season.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have two former players that when I was growing up watching, they were at the top of their games. Like Rajon Rondo was just such a floor general for the Boston Celtics and throughout his career. Like Cade could definitely learn, passing angles from Rondo, pick and rolls, how to manipulate defenses. I think Rondo would be such a really big, mentor for him to learn. Because especially with the turnovers this year, obviously he's a high usage guard. He's going to have turnovers, but if Rondo can kind of give him some pointers of like how to pass the ball without it being a turnover, I think it would be a plus. And getting to be a mentor, by Carmelo Anthony. I mean, Cade with the jab step, Cade with just like a go-to move in the post. Like Melo said, if he had a 1-2 post move, he'd be unstoppable. Like no one would be able to guard him. Like he mentioned like an Andre Miller who it's a throwback. Like he used to work in the post. You mentioned the Chauncey Billups. Like those guys used to love to kind of back down and work in the post and just, make their opposing opponent tired down low. But like, I think I'd love to see Melo work with Cade. I've also like to see Rajon Rondo. I remember that episode on Run It Back with FanDuel. So a lot of these greats see how good Cade is, and they want to work with him to make him even better, which I absolutely love to hear and see. Do you have anything more you want to add to that conversation, or are you good?
If he can find one more name to kind of help him with that 3-point shot, I would love that too. Seeing Cade's 3-point numbers dip the way they did after Ivey, went out really sucked to see. Like he was really playing with a lot of confidence. Like I'll even go back to like I think it was the Kings game on the road where he puts up the 3 on the in front of somebody, and then he's screaming before the ball even goes in because he knew it was going to drop. That confidence wasn't there basically after the All-Star break. So I don't know if we need to go holler at Drewski or whoever it was that ruined his 3-point shot, but that was tough to see. Hopefully, he can find that rhythm and consistency, because you can't see him go 0 for 7 or 0 for 8, in game 6 of a playoff stretch. You can't see it. He's got to find some kind of comfort. He don't ever have to be Steph Curry, but he should never be 0 for or just struggling consistently from finding that rhythm in a 3-point spot. So, someone else can help him. I think Melo was like maybe a 35, 36% career 3-point shooter. If you can help him with that too, that would be great. Because that would also unlock so much more out of Cade's game.
Yeah, I mean, even like assistant coach Eric Vincent, I feel like he could definitely help Cade a little bit more. But I also think like the 3-point performance in the last 2 games was just tired legs at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because he had the ball in his hands so much. Like his usage rate was like up there with Jokic. It was like absolutely ridiculous of how much he had the ball. I think I saw a graphic where he had 400 possessions per game or something like that in his hand, which is just like absolutely like crazy. And it kind of shows you like how bad he needed like a second option next to him or a secondary like creator. But I did want to kind of stick with the playoffs and the regular season as a whole. So what do you think the biggest learning experience was this season and in the postseason?
Whew. I think the biggest experience that they learned is the little details matter so much. Like, I remember like even just brief moments where like Asar would like he was guarding Brunson and I think he looked away for like 2 seconds, not even 2 seconds, and Brunson had the ball in his hand and immediately darts to the lane and blows right by him. I feel like those little details matter and mean so much. It can change so much in a series, in a game. We kind of saw it be, fixed in terms of their regular season. In the regular season, they really, really struggled in the beginning of the year to close games in the fourth quarter. Like they were terrible at it the first, like maybe 10, 15 to 20 games, but they did a really good job of finding a rhythm, finding a way to play with the lead and finding a way to respond to runs, leaning on defense, leaning on transition buckets, and leaning to their identity as well, instead of trying to play keep up, which a lot of other teams do. Like if you're playing against a team like the Celtics, oh, they're shooting 33s, we got to get 33s up too. The Pistons did a really good job of sticking to what works for them and playing their game. So if they find the ability to kind of hone in on the consistency and the repetition of those little details, like fighting over screens, blocking out to make sure you're limiting the opportunity of an offensive rebound, turnovers, just simple little things like that. Just those little kind of details, I think, come with time and just repetition, which they already were finding a way to develop before Ivey's injury. So again, even without that, they were still able to push the Knicks to 6 games, lose a game that kind of came down to officiating more so than them just being outplayed by another team. Like, I don't care what Knicks Twitter was saying. Like, y'all can be proud of your win, but you can't stamp and say that you just outplayed the Pistons all 6 games. That didn't happen. Those little things came into play. That inexperience came into play, and they were just in little spurts in like moments where Brunson was able to show why he was clutch player of the year, or why Cat was able to take advantage of certain mismatches or certain things like that. I think that was the biggest experience. Obviously, I think depth matters as well because Cade was 100% playing tired by the end of the year. By the end of that postseason run, you could just tell he wasn't playing or shooting with the same lift. He wasn't dunking as often as we saw him do, earlier in the year, in the middle of the season. I just think those are the biggest takeaways, and I think they have enough continuity within their roster to build on that and be a bigger force and threat in the postseason next year.
Yeah, I think you're right there with the attention to detail. I think 2 areas where they're going to learn from is boxing out, because for a team that collectively rebounded the basketball pretty well, there were so many times, especially in the playoffs and in the regular season, where they would just look to see who was going to rebound the ball.
Yep.
Like they didn't crash the glass collectively. And I think that's an area of improvement for them. I also think turnovers are a huge thing where not every turnover I think is equal. I think there are certain turnovers where you're watching it and you're like, why did you try to force a pass when there's 3 guys in a lane right now?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's little stuff like that where like they could have easily, instead of winning a game by 3 points, they could have won the game by 10 points. Also think free throws collectively as a team, they could have got better. Like when I saw Malik Beasley was shooting over 40% from 3 and like barely 70% from the free throw line, it made no sense to me. But I think those are 3 areas in improvement with this team that where they can work on it this off season of, being more conscious of crashing the glass, taking better care of the basketball, and just, attention to detail, and also locking in. Don't lock in the second and third quarter. Like when the game starts at 7, be ready at 7.
Mm-hmm. There's 2 plays specifically I'm thinking of in terms of boxing out. The Mikal Bridges tip back in game 6 was huge. Like you don't get to Brunson's jump shot without that tip in by him. And then there was another play they had. I think it was the same game, maybe game 4. I don't know if it was Bridges or Brunson that missed the shot. They missed a 3, and then I think it was Schroeder and Asar that were just staring at the ball, and it just led it thinking, oh, you're going to get it, you're going to get it. Like, it didn't seem like they had any kind of activity to go get the ball. And I think Josh Hart was able to come off and get it, and then they scored on the second chance opportunity. That was huge for them, and I'm so happy you said free throws. There was a stretch where Cade and Ivey were shooting under 80% from the free throw line before the All-Star break. Completely unacceptable for those two. That is a huge point of emphasis they need to work on. It's even the veterans too. Like, I think Tim Hardaway missed a lot of huge free throws in some certain stretches. Beasley missed a lot. Like, it was some guys you just wouldn't be expecting to kind of be, I don't want to say like a hindrance, but they were just missing very important free throws in huge stretches of these kind of games. The Knicks were not doing that. You know, even like when they were doing the Hacker Robinson, he was able to at least get you one. He was able to get you one free throw out of that. So yeah, those are huge points. I'm glad you brought free throws into the fold too. Those are big discipline kind of moments and shots that they need to find a way to be consistent with.
I'm not expecting them to shoot 100% from the free throw line. That's unrealistic. But like when Asar was getting to the line as much as he was getting in the playoffs against the Knicks, I was like, man, like even if you hit like 70%, 75%, that game would have been over. They would have been up 10 because he got to the free throw line so much and he was attacking, and the Knicks really didn't know what to do.
Right.
But I think free throws maybe kind of go unnoticed by the fans, but like obviously rebounding, I think is very important. Defensive rebounding. I think offensive rebounding, they actually do a pretty good job of, crashing the glass and out rebounding. But I mean, if they can improve on those areas and learn from it this season, I think it'll be a success. And the coaching staff that they have, I think they're probably on these guys' ass like every day with like boxing out. And like if Duran or Stu gets like taken out of a play, no one else collectively tries to rebound the basketball. It's like the wildest thing to me. It's like they'll be under the basket and then they're just kind of looking, and I see Cade and Ron try to go for a rebound when it's like almost a half court. And it's just like, you guys got to do a way better job of just trying to crash the glass and go up for those rebounds. Like, don't be afraid to try to go for a rebound at the end of the day. Makes me appreciate Andre Drummond even more because like you never saw that when he was here at all. No one was getting a rebound.
Whenever it was anywhere in his range, remember the Carmelo Anthony, I got it here. That's what Trey was like. That if it was in my range, I'm going to get it. Durr did a pretty good job of improving that over the season, especially in the postseason as well. But he did a good job of fighting for extra possessions. But yeah, if they want to be the team that hones in on playing in transition and, maximizing their biggest strength, which is their speed and athleticism, you have to box out every single time. One of the biggest points I made before the series started was don't let Josh Hart be the best role player this series. If he's the best role player by a wide margin, you have no chance of winning this series. Yeah. He was doing a really good job of crashing the glass, but he was getting in foul trouble a lot too, trying to keep up with Cade and even guarding Asar in certain stretches as well, which, kind of limited his production in certain stretches. So that's definitely a huge emphasis that they need to focus on. And you're right. I think they got the perfect coaches to make sure that that's not going to be a point of emphasis or issue heading into next season.
Yeah, or, maybe you add someone in free agency that has a little bit more size in the front court, and you don't have to worry about rebounds as much. You never know at the end of the day. So we have one more topic, and obviously this news happened a couple of weeks ago, but I'm just getting around to talking it now because I've kind of wanted to have my thoughts because both of these guys played a role with the Detroit Pistons. So Joe Dumars got hired very quickly, I might add. So they move on from David Griffin, which I'm happy for Joe. He's getting another opportunity. But Eric, if you would have told me Troy Weaver and Joe Dumars were working in the front office, I would have called you a liar. I was really surprised by the hire. I want to know what you think, though. Like, what are your thoughts of not only Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver working in the front office for the Pelicans?
Next to the Luka trade of reports I did believe, that was at the top of the list. I'm like, no, There's no way that this is real. Like if Dumars was there by himself, like all right, cool, that makes sense. Bringing Weaver with him just was hilariously unbelievable to me. Weaver, I feel like is never gonna get out of a rebuild. I think he is just determined to be in a rebuilding situation just for the rest of his career at this point. And even with Dumars, I mean, granted, he did a good job, putting together the 04 roster, but kind of after that, he struggled with keeping it afloat. So I feel like this is going to be a very challenging situation for them. Even if they do get that number 1 pick, I feel like you got to find out something to do with Zion. You got to figure out a way to keep a lot of your guys healthy and, keep the right components, in position for them, because I didn't think they were going to struggle to the amount that they did. Like, I thought they would at least be in the play-in or like kind of hovering around that area. To see that them, struggle the way they did, even with the injuries and whatnot, I was just surprised the step back that they took. And now that Joe D and Troy Weaver are leading the charge to rebuild it, I don't know. I'm a little nervous about what things go. I'm going to try to tap in with Pelicans Twitter to see how they feel about it. But I don't know. The Zion thing is going to be the biggest, benchmark to see what direction they go in. The other guys, you can kind of live with whatever decisions they make. But what they do with Zion is going to be the biggest point of emphasis. And I think it's going to be the biggest stamp on what their tenure is going to be like in that franchise.
So with Joe going to New Orleans, it makes sense because he kind of grew up like around that area. I know Truth Over Emotions mentions that. And I think that's a great point. The Troy Weaver thing, the only thing I could think of is I think collectively we can both agree Joe Dumars was not a great drafter. And I think that's where Troy can kind of assist him in that way. Mm-hmm. Like outside of Tayshaun Prince, like there was a lot of draft misses in my personal opinion. Obviously, like Andre Drummond for like where you're at was pretty good. Brandon Knight, I mean Greg Monroe. I mean, I don't even want to like go down to the later years. I mean, I could keep going and just torture Pistons fans, but I don't want to do that. Let's move on. Let's just be a safe and healthy space at the end of the day. I respect Joe D though, man. He brought 3 championships to the Detroit Pistons. Felt like he could have brought more if he would have drafted the right players around the teams that he did have. I think Troy will do a pretty good job of, identifying talent and, getting the Pelicans at least on the right track. I did actually have the opportunity to talk to one of my buddies that does cover the Pelicans, and they're pissed off. They're so pissed off because they have a cheap owner that doesn't want to spend money because they own the New Orleans Saints and the Pelicans. They weren't so much mad at the Joe D hire. They were more mad at the process that's the only person that was reported of, getting interviewed. And I guess Joe D is like kind of chummy with the owner, friends. So I guess it's kind of like a nepotism thing at the end of the day. I mean, like we know nepotism better than anybody. I mean, like there's tons of nepotism in the Detroit Pistons front office.
Even for going several back to years. Weaver.
Yeah. Even going back to Weaver, tons of nepotism. I have to give Troy credit. He did lay the foundation. A lot of the core guys that helped the Pistons win this season were Troy Weaver draft picks. Now, did Troy hit on every draft pick? No. I mean, I think the Killian draft pick is probably his biggest stain on his tenure. Not to say that Killian was a bad player, just mentally it just wasn't there. And then you have guys like, a Halliburton, Desmond Bain. Stu was a good draft pick, obviously. And the other draft picks, obviously, like I don't really give him too much credit for Cade. I think anyone would pick Cade in that draft at the end of the day. I think me and he would probably both draft Cade, but it'll be interesting to see what direction New Orleans goes in because like there's reports that like Joe D has to trade Zion. Like that was a prerequisite for him to actually take the job. You have to trade Zion Williamson. Did you see that trade that FanDuel put out today?
I did. Yep, I definitely saw that.
Yeah, I mean, like for Pistons fans that haven't seen it, I mean, like this is off-season content if I've ever seen one, Eric.
And this is just getting started too. It's gonna be a lot of these trade machine ideas to see what they can do. I don't think Zion stays. I think they're gonna get rid of him. Where he goes is the question. Who wants to take on his risk is a good, question to ask, but it's going to be tied to the Pistons all offseason until something happens. I mean, just off the strength of Langdon's history with New Orleans. Obviously now with Jody and Weaver being there, do each other a solid, see what they can put together and work out. It's going to be very interesting. I think, I'm one of those people who likes to give Weaver a little bit more credit for his drafting, going to get Duren the way he did, picking up Asar, who I don't think was a slam dunk pick at number 5. Like, people act like, oh, it was an obvious. No, it wasn't. Like, people had him as low as like towards the bottom of 10, like in that draft. So, I'll give him his credit for what he did. It was everything else he did around it, like constantly going after these reclamation projects, constantly going after these centers who, are just not ready to play. Even the wings they got, like the Alec Burks of the world, Bojan, who was hurt for a while and not really much of a defender. Like, he didn't have the ability like a Trajan did, who said, oh no, these are the kind of athletic guys that can buy in on a two-way effort to really, maximize the potential of their foundation. That's where they kind of separate. I'll definitely give him his credit as a drafter, and it definitely should help Joe D. Maybe they, get lucky, get a guy like Dylan Harper to kind of change their, their trajectory. But Zion is the most important thing out of all of that, and I'm very intrigued to see what happens and where he goes.
Yeah, I saw this trade, and like, here's my thing with Zion. I never question the talent; it's just the availability.
Of course,
like this trade actually, like for the Pistons side, it's not that bad. But I think the Pelicans would want more personally. I think the Pelicans say no, like if this was actually proposed, because I mean, I see like Zion for Giannis talks right now. I don't know about you, but like that's what I'm seeing right now. Like I could see Zion going to Miami Heat. Maybe Miami gets a little freaky and blows it up. Like there's just so many like situations where I think he can go. I think the Detroit Pistons are going to make a big move. They're positioned to make a big move. I just don't think it's going to be right now. I could be wrong there, but I think the way the contracts are lined up and the way the front office is talked about not rushing steps, I think this year was a big evaluation year. Now they have a lot of answers. And now it's up to Trajan to, work his magic again and, try to find, value guys like he did with, Malik, trading a Quentin Grimes for a Tim Hardaway Jr., maximizing the talent that they have, because Trajan, to me, I think has a pretty good eye for what the Pistons need, like getting Dennis Schroeder for absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Man, you would have thought he played for the Detroit Pistons for 10 years. Like he fit like a damn glove, bro. Like, who knows what happens in New Orleans? Who freaking knows? But it's their problem, not ours. I will though be paying close attention to see if it's just a disaster tear down rebuild, or they try to retool and try to sell the fans the play-in tournament.
Yeah, I think he's pretty happy about what the result was, knowing that, hey, we were able to make this work with these additions. So while it could help to bring a Zion level player, maybe a star level, tier player, couldn't, change a lot of their fortune, they don't necessarily feel like they have to do that right away. Like, they're at a timeline right now where these guys are still young. Ivey's, recovering from an injury. Duren is still a baby. Like, there's a lot of, patience that's still afforded that you don't have to rush into immediately. Like, if they, get back to the postseason and just win the first round and lose in the second, that's a step forward. Like, I don't feel like the Pistons are in a position right now where they're looking like the Knicks were, where they traded everything to, cash in on bringing Cade in, bringing Mikal Bridges in, even bringing in OG to go with Brunson. They don't have to make those kind of sacrifices at this moment. Zion would be somebody that would purge a lot of those, resources that they have within the franchise. I think stylistically it would work. Again, if he's healthy and on the floor, it would work. I think it would be a fantastic fit for this team, but you would just have to give up so much and change so much. And based on the locker room, based on what they did this season in terms of their, I don't even say overachieving, but the way that they were able to exceed expectations, I feel like they're very patient with what they're seeing in terms of their roster building. And I don't think they're trying to go full throttle in a move like that. And I completely understand that thought process.
Yeah, I was looking at like FanDuel's posts because like they had so many they had players kind of like listed to like which they wanted to I'm trying to pull it up right now. Give me a second. Okay, I actually
Mhm.
went on their tag because some of the players that they had in the pose, I was like, yo, like I know you guys are just trying to run an Instagram account right now. I get it. I understand it. I'm trying to find it. Good lord. This is terrible podcasting by me, by the way. I apologize, you guys. I'm trying
They
to
just got
find
out of the
like
playoffs. It's okay. They'll deal with it.
eh, I don't know. Like, did they delete the post already? There's
Uh-oh.
no way. No, they didn't. Okay, here it is. They just post so much. So who should the Pistons trade for this summer? Listen to this list: Giannis, Kevin Durant, Zion Williamson, Lauri Markkanen, John Morant, Joel Embiid.
Oh. God. Some of those names I like, but a lot of those names I hate. It's crazy the top of that list. Yeah, Zion and Ja possibly being like top contenders and being traded out soon is shocking. Not shocking based on where things are now, but based on how they were built, when they were drafted, is kind of crazy that both of them could be out of here as soon as the next 2 years.
It really is. Like I'd be lying to you if I said KD and Cade wouldn't just be crazy. I would kind of sell my fandom for 2 years of KD if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I
Like
don't
I
blame
really
you.
would, man.
I
Like
don't blame you.
Cade, Cade playing next to Kevin Durant, but like I don't want it to implode because every team KD's gone to recently has just rebuilt and imploded. I've just enjoyed watching KD from afar for years. Lauri Markkanen, though, if I'm being honest, dude, that's the perfect stretch for the pair next to Duran and Cade. But man, that price is gonna be steep. You ain't
Yeah,
getting them. You ain't getting them for like cheap because
no.
Danny Ainge is just he's a shrewd GM.
Hmm.
But all the other names like Joel Embiid, I'm good.
No,
I don't think Joel Embiid is going to be playing basketball for too much longer. That
I don't
knee
think so either.
reminded me of Blake Griffin's injury like a
Yeah.
lot when I saw him play. I think it was the ESPN game when Cade was sitting out and the thing was like wrapped all the way up to his thigh and he had no mobility and he couldn't move.
Yep.
I was like, yeah, I don't think Embiid's going to be playing basketball for too much longer. I think he's personally cooked.
Yeah, I don't see how many other teams would be interested in taking that on. Knowing that Zion gives effort on both sides of the ball, he's still explosive and he's I don't know, they're just not the same kind of player to based on what they would need. Embiid is a guy that kind of needs everything predicated around him, and knowing how bad his injuries have been and just have been continuously, yeah, I can see him hanging it up, within the next few years. That wouldn't surprise me at all based on what he's done.
I know. I've seen they didn't mention him in that graphic, but I keep seeing Jaren Jackson Jr. like crazy, and I get it. You guys, I get it. Michigan State.
Yep.
He's the archetype that you want, but I mean, you guys want to talk about a big that doesn't rebound.
Terrible rebound.
Jaren Jackson Jr. is allergic to rebounding at times.
Yes.
You guys would be crashing out. One, you crash out because you'd look at the contract, be like, well, why are we paying this guy this much money? But he's the archetype that you want. He's a front court player that can stretch the floor. Uh, Defensively, he can lock in, but I kind of think he's regressed a little bit. And I don't know if that's because of the Memphis situation with Taylor Jenkins, the distractions with the media. I don't know what it is. Maybe a change of scenery could be, good for him. But like the only like big that I would actually like, and he's actually going to go into his second year next year, is like I'd call Miami to see what they want for Khalil Ware. Like that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Like that's a guy that I was really high on the draft last year. He's a stretch 5, 7-footer, can block shots. Miami might be going through a retooling or a rebuild. I'd call Miami to see what they want for a Khalil Ware because I think would be really intriguing. I mean, you could put him at power forward. You could put him at a center if you want. I mean, like that's what they were doing for a majority of the season. They were putting Bam at the 4 and Khalil Ware at the 5 because he can just really stretch out defense. But I keep an eye on Miami to see what they do. I don't want Tyler Hero, by the way. Because I just saw someone say, "Go get Tyler Hero." Hell no.
No, we don't want Tyler Hero.
No, I don't want the guy from Toy Story on my team. No.
Sid from Toy Story. I like Ware. That's a good idea. I'm not mad at that at all. Again, I want them to find, maybe if they're not as big as a Lowry marketed, like, to me, I wouldn't be mad if they like would have. Again, I'm not sure how available these guys are or not. I'm talking in terms of their play style, and based on where their team is, I can see them possibly blowing things up soon. If the Kings, maybe wanted to fish around Keegan Murray for some reason, like they just wanted to, completely reset because they got to retool a lot of names, he would be somebody I really like. Really, a lot of guys from that class in general. Jabari in Houston, for some reason, it's just not clicking with them for some reason. Like, right away, perfect. I'm just getting comments. No, I think there's something there with him. I feel like a lot of these names are guys that are, maybe just a one coach away to unlocking a few different things. Yeah, I don't think Jared Jackson is one of those guys though, because he didn't have bad coaching in Memphis, I don't believe. Like he was able to be their number one guy, while Ja was hurt, get himself an all-star nod, the defensive player of the year. He showed that he's a very capable, player on both sides, but you should never be questioning his ability to rebound, as your anchor in the middle. Like that's just not going to fly, especially on a JB Bickerstaff team. Jabari's a name I really like. I've talked about Cam Johnson a lot. And then Keegan Murray. Like, I just feel like those kind of fours who, again, they're not stars, but I feel like the way they play kind of fills in that perfect need. They basically kind of remind me just of young Tobias Harris, to be totally honest with you. Like, I think the way they play is perfect for his kind of style, to send him to the bench and then let those guys be the two-way players you need, who can also create their own shot and play good defense on the other end as well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like there's a lot of disgruntled, like borderline role players that could possibly be turned into all-stars. I think there's several. Like one player that isn't on Sacramento is Keon Ellis, who's a guard, who is just a dog. I want to do like one more question. This is a super chat from Bear, which I didn't even see you donate this, so I appreciate you. What would it take for you to consider this great off season for the Pistons? What point should the front office pursue superstars to pair with Cade?
I think what we consider a great off season for the Pistons would be getting Beasley back on an affordable deal. Overpaying, I think, would be very, very troublesome, because I like Beasley a lot. I love the energy he brings. I love his shooting prowess. I love, what he's grown to be, even as a scorer. Like, I don't even think he's strictly just a shooter. Like, I think he did a really good job of growing as, like, an attacker and floating, jumpers over the defenders. But finding him at a reasonable, deal, I think is going to be important. Somehow getting back Schroeder on, a similar type of deal. And you know what? This is the kind of guy I am, at least in terms of trades and adding players. Sometimes you don't get the players you want. Sometimes you don't even make a trade at all. But I appreciate hearing that the GM tried. I appreciate hearing that they're not just saying, okay, we could just roll back what we had and, we're fine with what we have. Like, for me, I'm a Lions fan, and I hate seeing that Brad Holmes isn't even trying to add a top-line defensive end to go next to Aiden Hutchinson. He's not even trying to get those kind of guys. That is driving me crazy. I want to, at the very least, know that Trajan is trying to find these guys. Hey, what would it cost for Isaiah? What would it cost for, this piece right here, this piece right here? What would Naz Reid want here, to, positive? Just at the very least, try. I don't want to see them come back with the, hey, let's just let the kids roll out and take one more year of just, sheer development. I feel like you should always be trying to fine tune your roster in some way, shape, or form, especially when it's such a young foundation around it. So yeah, for me, and this is just me personally. If anybody else has a different view, I totally understand. But I would be okay just knowing that they tried to dip their feet in the water of trying to get another stretch forward that would fit with this team, along with the other moves that I suggested as well.
I know I was listening to I know it's completely off topic. I'll answer your question in a minute, Bear. But Trajan said that when he first got here, he got told no by so many agents, so many teams when he was
Right.
cold calling people. Like
Yes.
Trajan leaves every stone unturned. Like he's going to make the call, see what it takes. If the teams are interested, cool. If they're not, they're not. He's not going to get his feelings hurt. To your Brad Holmes point, I heard his explanation on 97.1 why he didn't go and try to target an edge rusher. And he was just like, well, what would you rank Aiden Hutchinson? You'd probably say he's like, what, top 10 edge rusher? He's like, yeah, those guys are hard to find. That's why I didn't go out and get one. He was just like, and like my explanation with that, like I can understand his thought process, but at the same time, it's just like, it's frustrating as a fan, especially a Lions fan, because like,
Yes.
who knows if Aiden Hutchinson is going to be the same player as he was, pre-injury. Obviously, there's all the the videos out right now where he's still kind of favoring his leg, and that's to be expected. He broke his tibia and fibia.
Right.
But to answer your question, Bear, what would it take for us to consider a great offseason? I'm hoping Malik takes the mid-level. Take the mid-level exception, Beasley, please. I promise you, you'll get paid because that would not affect the Detroit Pistons cap space. Go get Dennis Schroeder, re-sign him. And I think Dennis would like want to be here. Him and Malik are, longtime friends. And I feel like he really liked being here. I mean, he compared this Pistons team to that Atlanta Hawks team that won 60 plus games and went to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, I mean, the fact that Dennis is kind of giving like that stamp of like how it's kind of the same, I think is pretty huge. And I feel like he's a guy that likes to be here. So if you can resign those two, I think you're off to a great start. What point should the front office pursue a superstar to pair with Cade? I don't think it's this summer. I think where they try to target someone is next summer. And I'll explain why. Tobias Harris is off the books. Simone Fontecchio is off the books, which Tech could realistically be dealt this offseason. You never really know. But it would open up more cap space for the Detroit Pistons. Now, what I think is very important is the extension talks with Jaden, Ivey, and Jalen Duran, which I kind of think go out the window sometimes with fans because they are extension eligible if you want to give them contracts. Now, you could say, hey, we like you, but we're just going to kind of wait and see what happens. Prove it year, right? Like they could go into this summer, tell Ivey and Duran saying like, we need a little bit more of a sample size to see before we make a long-term investment. And that could actually, benefit the Pistons if, they go into not this summer, but next summer and try to go get a big fish. Then you kind of have those conversations and you have more, more of a, concise idea of like what you want to do and how you want to build around this team. I think the way the Pistons have positioned the contracts kind of tell you it's not going to be a big move this summer. It'll probably be the following summer, just the way the contracts kind of fall off and people will be free agents. I would like laugh kind of in private, and I probably shouldn't laugh. Like if the Pistons do Tobias dirty twice in a row and make a big move and trade him, like, bro, like, come on. Like, you can't tell me that wouldn't be funny. Like, you wouldn't kind of like if you're just scrolling the timeline, you see a Shams tweet and it's like Tobias Harris, blah, blah, and a first round pick have been traded for X player. I'd be like, bro, come on, man. How many times are you going to do this to this man?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That would be pretty dirty to play on him. No, I don't know. I think Tobias has done an awesome job. Again, I would like to see him kind of retire with the Pistons at this point. He doesn't need to be a 30-minute player, for the next several years. Again, I think there's a role, where he is the guy that comes off the bench. It just gives you an extra scoring punch, against, second team guys. His ability to post, was huge for the team, but he was getting double teamed a lot. They're not going to be able to do that immediately if he's coming off the bench, going against your second string guys. I would like to see, like I said, I'd like to see him stick around for a little bit longer. I just feel like he's been a huge asset in terms of the maturation of a lot of these guys, in terms of their preparation of, the postseason, in terms of, his ability to grow as a defensive player this late in his career. He was a pretty good rebounder for them as well. Like he did a lot of good things for them. And I think he understands the business of the NBA. It would just be kind of foul at this point, even based on the successes they had, to say, all right, man, sorry, we got to run it back one more time. You're going back to the Clippers. Like, golly, bro, can I just settle somewhere, please? He's been trying to settle for a while. So I feel like this is the most realistic place he can do that. But yeah, Trey just got a lot of questions he has to answer, over these next couple seasons of what to do for this team.
I know. It's just like he obviously he's getting up there in age, and I was talking with Sean about this. He was just like, it's like, I feel like Tobias could I think he said I feel like Tobias could like kind of fill that Al Horford role. And I'm like, and I'm thinking about that. I was like, I was just like, I like the positivity. But I could definitely see this front office, because this is a brand new front office, by the way. But like, if there's a deal to be made, we all understand it's a business at the end of the day. But I think you can't take away the professionalism and just the camaraderie that Tobias and these vets have kind of like brought into this locker room and reestablished new culture. But like, I'd be lying to you if I said I wouldn't kind of chuckle if I saw a tweet of a potential trade, whether it be this summer or at the trading deadline or even next year, where it's just like, yeah, Pistons finally bit the bullet and did it again. Like, because that would be so dirty, though, at the same time.
It would. It truly would. He's again, a 2-year contract is, that's prime bait for these kind of discussions. And I think he kind of understands that. He didn't get a 3-4 year deal. He's like, hey, we like you, but we're not giving you what you just got with Philly. We're not going to repeat that same, issue. That's not going to happen. Again, I think he understands the nature of the business. He kind of talked about it a lot after the trade deadline as well. It's easy to talk about it with, a smile and, a clear head when you're not a part of the deals, but they're in a position where they kind of got to decide on that now. Like, again, we know who the names are now, but, by midway next season, that could be totally different than some other names that could be available. So if he got to be the guy, then he's got to be the guy. I don't think he'll ever get like booed or like be, regarded as any kind of hated player of this team. I feel like he's always built up a good rapport when he's with the Pistons based on a lot of other teams he's been on. So I think he'll be fine, hopefully, with with understanding the business, I guess.
Yeah, Devon said not as dirty as Knox getting traded and signed every year. Oh, yeah, that was just diabolical by Troy. I mean, like him being like dealt in the Sadiq trade and then sign him, and then him getting dealt with like I don't even remember was it the Tech trade maybe?
It was to Utah, I think. Or
the poor guy. And then he was like on the Golden State team, and they went to the G League team, and they cut and then traded him. I was like, bro, like I feel so bad for a guy that was a lottery pick. It just cannot get consistent. But man, I appreciate you hopping on as always. We've almost been on for 2 hours. Almost got 800 people in here watching while the playoffs are on right now. I'm actually about to turn on Game 7. I don't know who's gonna win it. I'm hoping it's the Rockets because I'm kind of sick of seeing the Warriors like every year.
Me too.
Hope the Rockets make it. But do you want to tell the people that are watching right now where they can find you, where they follow you, can support your work?
Of course, man. Thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. Thank y'all for tapping in with us as well. Follow me on social media at I am Eric Vincent. Be like, or don't be like Ben Stiller, and actually give me a follow. I would really appreciate that. I feel like I've earned it. Follow me at I am Eric Vincent on all my socials. Tap in with me on my YouTube page, Top Title Detroit. The Pistons exit interviews are coming up soon. I'm gonna try to get a lot of the content from those interviews with the players and the coaches on my channel. If you want to check it out, be sure to lock in with me on there. Top Title Detroit. I have my articles and my coverage on clutchpoints.com as well. Again, I got an interview exclusive with Walt Frazier that I did just before Game 6 that I'm really proud about. One of my, biggest career accomplishments that I'm super, super excited about. If you guys want to check that out, I'd really appreciate it. A lot of good coverage as well on the team as well. Clutchpoints.com. I'm trying to be all over the internet this year, man. So, if y'all can tap in with me, I'd really appreciate the love.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be everywhere. I mean, like I just looked. Apparently, I have like 15,000 followers on Threads, and I don't even post on there. I was like, oh, I forgot about Threads. Threads was gonna like overtake Twitter for like 12 hours. So
exactly.
Blue Sky. Yeah, I did Blue Sky, and I was just like, bro, this app, there's no way it's gonna compete with Twitter. It is
Yeah.
just so buggy. I know some people are still like trying to promote it, like, oh, follow me on Blue Sky. I'm like, yeah, no.
I gave up after like a week. I couldn't do it. I'm like, nah, just stick here with Elon's little thing. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good over here. I do have your Twitter and your YouTube in the description below. If you guys are watching live on YouTube right now, you want to go follow Eric's Twitter. You just click it. It's like directly to his Twitter. You want to go support his YouTube channel with the interviews and the content that he does post over there. Definitely go check it out. But we'll see you guys next week. Don't know what the hell I'm going to talk about next week. Probably exit interviews, if I'm being honest. But until next time, you guys have a good weekend and go Pistons as always. Peace.